There we go. All right. Good morning, everyone from this side of the world, and good afternoon to all of our friends from. So far, we have only friends from Cameroon here. Great to have you as other friends are dialing in. We hope you had a great weekend and start of a new week. So, as always, we want to see who did you have a chance to talk to and share what you've learned. So, in the chat during this last week, if you had a chance to talk to anyone about what we did, what we learned last week, it would be great if you can share, put it in the chat. And I will begin to pull up our lesson plan for today. Or you can even unmute yourself since there's still only a few of us here. If anybody would like to share. All right. Here comes Nari. Okay. So today on the schedule, I'm not sure how many people actually look at the schedule. We were going to talk about credit and credit cards, but we did a little bit of a change of plan. I think it's important to continue our conversation from last week about starting to keep track of our finances, budget, a little bit of budgeting and so forth. So first of all, thank you all for everyone who did their assignments. I've been going through all the worksheets. These are great. This is I think the first time that we have so many of the participants actually doing their assignment. It's a great way to learn. We've been really encouraging everyone to do that. So thank you all for those who've done it. And um, and those who are still maybe had a little bit of challenge. I know in Cape Town, the power was out yesterday and the day before. So there's always some kind of challenges. Gina, welcome. Gina, welcome. We haven't done anything yet. We're just getting started. There was a question from her in the chat. So today, as I mentioned, we're going to continue our conversation about, we'll review what we did last week. I'm gonna share my screen. So we'll review what we did last week and then continue with the discussion on the importance of keeping track of our income and expenses. All right, so last week we we began to set some goals in our worksheets. We did our individual goals, hopefully with did family goals, and then really importantly, how we want to be remembered by, what do we want to leave. I wish we had time that everyone could share what they put in there. It's amazing of what some of the goals that friends have put in their worksheets. I personally love it. We get to see all of them. I know our staff has a chance to see all of them. Then we talked about, we got into the moderation lesson where we talked about the importance of creating a shopping list every time we go, particularly to a supermarket, because we get enticed with things that we want, or sometimes we might forget things if we don't have a list. And it's so important because not many people have unlimited amount of money that they can just go purchase stuff. But yet, when we go to a supermarket, or these days, we don't even have to go to a supermarket. We are sitting at home and just clicking a few buttons, and then things show up at our door for areas where they have delivery. So it's more and more becoming more important to make sure that we try to control our desires and not just let things get out of hand. Then we had our table, our time budget table. I know that this is very important for a lot of people. One of the participants actually created her own time budget sheet. It was very detailed. I loved it. It was great. Again, I wish we had enough time that we could share everyone's work. But as you can see, we're going very fast through the current program. And then we stopped at responsibility, where we begin to learn our responsibility for ourselves, within our family, and then more importantly, what we think we can do for our community, for our neighborhood. And again, there are so many great things in there. I have talked to Victor to see if we can add another 3-hour session, maybe in June, to work on these, because these challenges are so big, so great, that it needs everyone's participation and everyone's work in there. So I'm going to stop sharing so I can see who else has joined us, if anybody else, and see if anybody had any thoughts of what they shared. Again, if you have shared what we've learned together with anyone, please put it in the chat so we know. Any question before we continue on? No, we're good. Okay. Everybody's quiet today. I know it's early morning, well, kind of early morning for us here. All right, let me share my screen back. And all right, so I'm going to go back to patience. And so if you remember, we talked about our life is always about preparing for the next stage of life. We went through this. And then we promised to talk a little bit more about active and passive income. Question for now, who can tell us either in chat, please put it in chat. What is active income and what is passive income? I'm sure a lot of know it, but please put it in the chat. What do you think? What is the difference between passive and active income? If anybody has any idea before we get into it. And I will pull up the sheet. I need to make my screen just a little smaller. Ah, so let's see if anybody has any idea.
Yvonne says that active income, you exchange time for money.
Okay, all right, that's very good. Okay. Yvonne also says passive income, your money works for you while you sleep. Perfect, that's how it goes. So let's look at how money flows through our personal or business bank accounts or pockets. How do they come and how do we spend them? So when we're starting to earn income at a young age, or when we begin to be adults, this is what's active income. We earn it through either doing extra chores, extra responsibilities around the house. Then we become employees of other companies or other people. It doesn't have to be company. It could be someone that has a few employments. Or someone could start their own little small business just by themselves and be a self-employed. This could be someone who is an accountant that works by himself or herself, someone who is doing plumbing, someone who's doing a carpenter, whatever that is. Then some people take that a step further and then create a little business out of their idea. So they have maybe a few people working for them. So this is still active income because it requires us to go to work, to do something, or even remotely since the pandemic. Remotely, we have to do something. And then, but as we were seeing that at some point of time, our physical body will not be capable of continuing to work. And we need to make sure that we are prepared for that stage, which in the past, there used to be retirement, but now a lot of people like to call it the next stage of life, whatever we want to call it. But we know for sure that our body at some point of time will not be able to work, physically work. We might be able to mentally work, but and we don't want to burden our physical body anyway. So that's why we need to be preparing for passive income as soon as we can. And passive income usually comes if we create something that we can get royalty from. If we can have rental income, and we'll see where that comes from. Or if we live in societies where there are interests. So if you have money in a bank and then that gives us interest or dividend. And then also another category is when we get capital gain, and we'll talk about what these are. So normally our income comes from active income or passive income, and then we expend it for life necessities, for things that we like to have, travel, jewelry, whatever that is. Sometimes we have to borrow money for things that we want to do, loans or credit cards, and then we need to entertain, keep ourselves entertained and healthy. So this is the normal flow of we generate income from active and then hoping that we get to passive and then to expensive. Now, and it's so important to know what's happening, how much is coming in and how much is going out. And that is, as we talked about last week, it is fairly difficult for some friends, some people. So I know one of the assignments from last week was to begin tracking your income and expenses. And so far, I have seen only one person to do it in worksheet, unless if anybody else did it this morning. One of our youth began to put some numbers in there. So in the chat, uh, did you try to work on the um, income and expense, the weekly income and expense sheet? Did anybody try that? I'm gonna pull that up so we can see. And if you didn't try, what was the reason? Why was it that you had, was it technical issues that you had that you couldn't do? So this was the sheet that we presented. We asked you to begin, and I did go in and change. So we'll make this 5 from May 7th. I did change that for everyone. Let's see. So Gina, as she put it in there, so far she was the only one that was able to put it in, and I know that that's probably either pretend or for her parents, but it doesn't matter. So this is where we really need to. Often in financial education workshops, uh, the importance of creating a budget is very emphasized. However, we first need to do this. First, we need to begin to keep track of what we are doing. And then we can graduate from this, we can create a budget sheet in there. I know Elliot is a accountant and he does this for his clients. Elliot, did you try to do the income and expense tracking for your personal stuff? He's scratching his head. That means no.
No, I didn't do that. I didn't do that.
Okay. Do you want to tell us why? Well, I don't want to put you on spot, but why? Was it that you were busy? Was it that I know you didn't
Yes,
have?
no. This week I had my hands full on a lot of things. Couldn't do that.
Okay. All right. So
Yeah, but
that
I'll definitely work on this.
Okay, very good. So, and I've been having conversation with several other members in the background of this group is that, yes, we make time for a lot of other stuff. We make time for social media. We make time for maybe watching a movie. We make time for visiting friends and family. We make time for work. But it is very important. Yvonne says, I'm sorry, I was extremely, I think, busy this weekend, but I will have full spreadsheet with this data, so I will add it to this week. Okay, so that's what it is. We need to allocate time for our finances. We cannot say, well, I got busy with this stuff, I have to do it next week, because finances, as we are seeing, it's a part of our life. We cannot set it aside, and this is what gets us into trouble if we don't try to do this. So,
Alex,
yes,
John Paul asked if you suggest tracking all expenses first, then make the budget.
that's what we're doing, exactly. So this sheet does not have the budget. I'm going to go back to the table of content in here so you can see. So in your worksheets, there is the budget, which we will do later. So first we need to get a understanding of where our money is going. Most of us know how much money comes into our pocket, but then we have no idea what, well, we know how much rent is, we know how much we pay for internet or our mobile phones, but then all the other things and things that are not done on monthly basis. So that's why we're doing this exercise. And that's why we were doing it on weekly basis. Eventually, you should be able to do it on monthly basis. So And we will continue to encourage. I've been sending messages through WhatsApp to all the participants, encouraging them to do this. And we know that it's difficult to get started. All right, so that is the weekly income and expense. And then there's another sheet in here. This is going to be a new assignment for everyone, is to keep track of our assets and liabilities. So let's see, what is our assets and liabilities? So while we have our income and expenses, then we have two other categories of how we need to keep track of our finances. Assets and liabilities are what we have, what we owe, what we own, and then what we owe. So, and we have divided the assets into two separate categories. There are some assets that don't generate income. So let's say the home that if we own a home, we're not generating any income from it. If we own a car or a vehicle, unless if we are using that to make earn money, most of us, we just have a car or the furniture that we have. So these are, and they don't, sometimes they don't appreciate, they don't gain any value. Their value stays the same. I don't want to get into life insurance. That's just there because that's a really deep conversation in here. But then there are assets that we can own that will help us generate income. So let's say someone who creates a piece of music, writes lyrics to a song or music, writes a book, have a design, and they can sell that. So that, and then generate income either from the sale of it or from an ongoing basis if it's licensed to someone. Those that have a property, whether it's residential or commercial for business, that they can rent to other people, that generates income. We will talk more about stocks, bonds, and savings, but those are also assets that help us generate income in there. And then we can have artwork, real estate. So there are some that continuously generate income for us on a regular basis, let's say on monthly or quarterly basis. And then there are some that their just value go up, but we do not see the cash until we sell it. So these are the asset area. And then we also have, most people, a lot of people have liabilities. These are things that we owe to others. We owe to banks. It could be a loan from a bank. It could be loan from a friend, from family, so understanding what these are is quite important in here. If we have credit cards, if you use credit cards that carry a balance, I really don't recommend carrying a balance on a credit card, but we know that a lot of people do. So we will get into more into the credit cards and so forth. So to keep track of your assets and balances, now you have a worksheet in here. So under the advanced level, there's also a tab called assets and liabilities. So if we click on that, and I did fix this for everyone. I forgot to fix our own worksheet. Okay, that I can just leave that example in here. So as you can see, this area is broken down into assets that generate income, sorry. So it could be investments, rental properties. So we write the values, and we need to keep track of those on monthly basis or quarterly or every 3 months, just to see what is happening with our finances. So then we have assets that don't generate any income. We can have bank accounts, deposits, savings. Stocks should not be here because it really generates income. If you have an automobile, if you have jewelry, and then if we have loans to other people or to credit cards, understanding how much we owe and then what percentage interest we are paying. This is what really gets us into trouble in there, paying interest. So I'm going to stop here as we got 5 minutes before we do the breakout. Jade, you got the breakouts ready? You're working on that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much. All right, so Gina asked, but banks do generate income. Gina, that's correct, depending on where you are and how I'm not sure if I understand your question. I'm going to stop sharing so we have the full screen. Jinan, would you like to explain? Do banks generate income, or do we the money that we put in there generates income? And if anybody else has questions about this, money we put in. So you're correct. When we put money into a bank, yes, it does generate some income. If you live in US, it's almost non-existent. They give you 0.01% for every dollar that we put in there. So if we put $100 in the bank, at the end of the year, they will give us 1 penny. They're very generous here in US with our bank account. So that's why we don't look at banks as a income generator. And John is asking, is the US 23% on credit cards? Yes. Minimum I have seen is about 16%. And then it goes up to like sometimes even 35, even 40%, depending on how reliable we are. If we're not reliable, if our credit is not good, then it could be a lot more. So from our friends in Cameroon, they're saying Cameroon, we are not really credit card based. I think you're lucky that you are not based on credit card. Credit cards can be a great tools if we understand how to use them, how to utilize them, which often people don't understand. But if we understand, they could be, as we will see in our credits session, which is going to be next week, credit cards can be our best friends or they can be our worst enemy. Let's see from
Alex, Elliot commented that in his country, the banks encourage savings by paying higher interest rates on the savings.
Okay. And that happens in a lot of countries too. So, but then I'm sure they probably charge more when they give out money as a loan to businesses as to buy cars. Does anybody know, like in Cameroon, from our friends in Cameroon, what is the interest if you're borrowing for a business or to purchase a house? Or even in South Africa, John Paul? Yes, Elliot, go ahead.
For- In Cameroon, for if you're to take an overdraft, it's 5%. Some banks give at 7%. And for loans, if you're taking a short-term loan, some banks give at 1.8% per month, or some go down to 1.5%. All depends on what the bank is trying to achieve. If they're trying to get in more customers, they reduce the rate of interest on loans.
Okay. Well, that's very great. That's very good that they do give that much or keep it low, because here in US right now, it's actually very low. So people that are getting loans to, let's say, buy a house, they can get it about 3%, but this is the lowest that we have ever seen in a long time. But then credit cards interest have always been very high. And it's very unfortunate that many people are taken by credit cards. But if we learn how to, like, I love my credit cards. I don't want to get into it because I'll just keep on talking, but credit cards are a great way. I cannot live, our family cannot live without credit cards. And we've been really working hard to teach our sons, they are in college, they're 18 and 20, to how to utilize their credit cards in the best way. So
John Paul has his hand raised.
Oh, sorry. Thank you for saying that. John Paul, if you want to share something with us, go ahead before we go into our breakout sessions.
Can you hear me?
Yes, yeah, I can hear you now. Yep.
Okay, I found it very interesting what you said. When you said you're setting a budget, the question that I had to you is, do you first monitor all your expenses or do you set your budget first? Because if you set a budget, then you'll be able to monitor what you're going to be spending and how to save. But when you say to monitor your expenses first, please explain to me why you suggest that to first monitor all your income and expenses in that way that I can get a better understanding.
Okay, all right. So you can start with a budget. There is nothing wrong. So if you like to start, let me share my screen. So on your worksheet, we think it's a little easier, but you don't have to start that way. So there's also an annual budget in your worksheet that you can start it from this month. Let's see, I will put it in there. And the way this works, the way the budget sheet works, you begin by putting your monthly, what you think your income and expenses going to be. So for example, if I think my income for every month is 1,000, and then you can see it automatically fills in for every month. You can also go and override it if you like to. So this is how this works. Then we come down into the expenses. So let's say my rent is fixed at 500. So half of my income is going for my rent. So you can do this. And then every month, so this is the brown columns is for what's budgeted. And then we will fill in every month. What's going to be difficult is every month come in and put the actual number in there. So we know, for example, this would be 500 in here. So we know that my rent is mostly is going to stay the same. So you can definitely do this too, John. It's really up to the individuals, whether they want to start by keeping track or they want to dive into the budget. It really does not, you can do it either way. But what's really important is setting some time aside to do this on monthly basis or weekly basis. Uh, uh, Starting with weekly and then maybe moving on to monthly. So I hope that answered your question.
Thank you, Alex. Yes, it did. Now I understand.
Okay, all right. And I think there was a comment from our friends in Cameroon that some of the terminologies that we are using may not be clear for our students. That's okay. We will learn. We will learn together. Just be patient with us as we're learning the terminologies and different aspects. All right. Why don't we go to our breakout rooms? Yes.
Maybe some of the students in Cameroon, if there's a term that they hear that they're not familiar with, they could just type it in the chat. And then as we go along, we might be able to give them a better definition for it.
Okay. Or if, since we're going into the breakout sessions, we can probably do that too. That can be discussed in there.
Yes.
So let's do the, Jade, go ahead and start the breakout sessions. We'll do it for 15 minutes and we'll come back.
Okay, and the questions are on the schedule and they're coordinated with which room. So I will go ahead and open the rooms. And then you should be able to join. And Alex, we only had one Allied Africa group
That's fine.
today, so I'm gonna go in there.
Okay, all right, sounds good. And I'll give Daniela to one of the other groups. Right. Welcome back, everyone. I hope you had a good breakout session. I visited the rooms. I know the conversations were lively, so I'll just go based on who I see on my screen. Nari, your group is up next first.
Great. Okay, our question was what kind of legacy we would like to leave, and based on the conversation about finances and what we want to do with our finances. And it was great because there really was kind of a trend in our conversation. Dree talked about wanting to open a home for girls who age out of foster care so that they would then be able to continue, in an environment where they're encouraged to succeed in life. So looking towards the future. And then Hazel talked about how she wants to leave a legacy of managing income and having a good quality of life for her children, grandchildren, and on, because that's what her father did for her. And so much of her financial decisions and plans have been based on what she learned. So she's trying to pass that on to the next generations. Glory talked about how she's working with girls with disabilities who are very vulnerable and wants them to have a safe place. So she wants to open a home for them where they can then have that stability to start their lives. And then this was really cool. Juliana talked about wanting to be an astronaut, and then her dad, John Paul, said that he wants her to be like the next Elon Musk. And he wants to educate people about finances and making sure that they have multiple streams of income so that they can reach their dreams and fulfill whatever ideas they have. And then Yvonne is going to conclude because she definitely, her input kind of pulled a lot of this together. So Yvonne.
Okay. Hi, everyone. So I basically just shared that from a personal perspective, I'm developing a financial coach program. And so part of that is every time I'm creating courses, I'm about to launch my podcast. My children are involved, so I get them knee deep in everything, so they're learning as we go along. My granddaughter, for example, all the networks that I'm connected to, there's training programs for children, so she's on those type of virtual training. And they all have piggy banks from they're born. They start off with piggy banks, life insurance, all those things. They understand what those tools are used for and the purpose of them. And then as a family, extended family as well, we all pull together and we're setting up a family trust because we're all involved in so many different volunteer projects. So we're trying to, even when we're not here, we're still able to support those endeavors. So basically that's what we do.
All right, very cool. Thank you so much. That was great. Irma, you're up next.
Okay, we had a very lively discussion about the pros and cons of credit card usage. And Elliot was helping us by taking everyone's perspectives about this. And I want him to take the floor and kind of sum it up for everybody. Elliot?
Yes. Okay. Our question was what are the pros and the cons of credit card? So for the pros, we had security, convenience, cashback, access to certain service, and it makes us conscious and careful with our spending. And for the cons, we had indiscipline, but it also makes us lazy since we have access to money we can borrow and pay back later. And also, it can lead to bad credit, especially when we carry over the credit and we don't pay back their due. So for security, having a credit card gives us security in the sense that we don't need to move around with cash. And moving around with cash, especially in our country, it's really not safe because we have burglars and armed robbers who can at any time attack you and get rid of the card. Unlike you having a credit card, you don't need your PIN code before doing any withdrawals. Then for convenience, it helps us to buy easily. You can go into a supermarket and you buy, you just pay with a credit card. And then cash back. This was from Emma because we in our country, Cameroon, really don't have cash back. So with the cashback policy, you have to read through. She says she advised that we should read through so we do not breach the patterns and be very conscious when we do it, and we'll get the cash back. For Daniela contributed by telling us that in case you're in the airport, there are some certain services that you need a credit card to have access to, and also in some lounges. And Madam APT says if we have credit cards, it will help us to be conscious and careful, so much so that we do not get to do impulse buying and impulse spending, because we have to definitely pay back a higher interest on that credit. And also, one of the cons was indiscipline. Once we have a credit card, we feel like we can spend because the money is there. We can just spend at any time. Yeah, so that was pretty much it for us.
Okay.
Thank you, Elliot.
Thank you so much. All right, Jade, you're up.
Okay, so our question was, what does it mean when your expenses are greater than your income? If this happens, what can or should be done? So this was really kind of focusing in on what Alex was going through about tracking our expenses and our income, and really doing some reflection about what actions they've seen in the past, for those who haven't input yet, to see if there was a period of time where they saw that they were spending more than they had money coming in, and kind of what they thought about different solutions that might can happen to address that. So first we had Emmanuel who said, really focusing on reducing your expenses. He felt like was the best way to approach that. If you saw that you were spending more money than you had coming in, really looking into what it is that you're spending the money on and how you might be able to reduce that. And then we had Leslie share that when that happens, where you're spending more than you have money coming in, that you're at a loss. And that's how he kind of viewed that situation. And so looking more about assessing your wants versus your needs, but then took a different approach than Emmanuel and said, instead of reducing your expenses, you might want to think about ways that you could increase your income. And so different streams of income that you could have, different sources of income, so that you might not have to reduce your expenses, and approach it from a little bit different approach. And then Elsie shared with us that if you reduce your level of spending, then you might not have expenses that aren't necessarily ones that you need. So kind of in line with what Leslie was saying about assessing the wants and the needs. And then Victor shared with us really the key of prioritizing, right? So not just prioritizing your expenses between what is more important, or what are needs versus what are wants, but your budget should also be prioritized, right? And your budget should be prioritized based off of the amount of money that you have coming in. So then you don't get to a place where you are reaching a scenario where your income is lower than the amount of money that you're spending. So if your budget is prioritized, it should match the amount of money that you have coming in. And then what you're actually spending the money on, your expenses, should also be in alignment with that. And so you would prevent yourself from getting into a situation where your expenses would be greater than your income.
All right, very cool. Thank you so much. All great conversations in here. There were a few questions in the chat that I'd like to respond to. I think Daniela asked if whether we should include money that goes toward our emergency fund in the budget. I think definitely yes. The budget is very flexible. You can put in as many categories as you like in there. You can categorize them exactly the way you want them to be. Everybody does their categories a little differently. So there are like fixed categories, our rent, our food that we purchase from supermarket. But then people may want to do it more detailed. So definitely emergency fund needs to be there. That's something that, and I think this pandemic showed us that before the pandemic, I think everybody was recommending to have, I don't know, 3 to 6 months of reserve fund. But we see that there could be situations where we need to even have more than that for some people that have been out of job and not having any income in there. There were questions about the security of online, the credit cards and online purchasing. This is something that is very concerning. It's absolutely right, depending on where you live, what country you're in. You understand, or you need to reach out to professionals that can just explain whether there are enough securities available to your credit cards or bank accounts or online, as this is becoming more and more popular. That what are some of the security things that needs to be made? Like, for example, here in the US and Canada, there are ways that we can lock our systems, or any individual can lock the system so nobody can get a credit card in our name. But it is very possible. I think it has happened to most of us where somebody has stolen our credit card number on the other side of the world and they used it. But at least here in the US, the banks are very good at not charging us for any expense that we did not make. But again, you need to, that's something that you need to understand, do some homework, and ask professionals in your country of what are some of these security measures that can be taken. Let me see if there are other questions. What about online platforms? Some people use their credit cards by buying things online. I think we talked about that. Yes. Like, for example, here in the US, it has become a regular thing for us that we just buy things online. It's been fairly safe, but then you have to look and see what is happening in your country. Well, that's okay. All right. So I think that's where we're going to stop again. Really, we cannot overemphasize the importance of keeping track of our income and expenses. There were a lot of conversation whether we reduce our expenses, whether we increase our income. So, but we need to have that. I often like to say, operating our, whether it's personal, family, or business finances without the budget, it's like driving a car without the petroleum gauge. If you don't know how much gas, how much petroleum is in the gas tank, you can try to guess, but it is guaranteed that at some point of time, your car will stop because you just don't know when you're going to run out of petroleum in your car. It's the same thing with our finances. It's very important to develop this habit. And as we've said, it's not an easy habit to develop. It takes time. All right, so let's take a 5-minute break and then we'll come back for our next session, which is about environment and being thankful and respectful. Enjoy your break.
not necessary. That is a really, you know, these are ways of having to determine the kind of life we want to have and the value that we put on the things of life that are really important to us. And it involves a lot of thinking and a lot of soul searching to really determine what's really necessary and unnecessary in life. Real thankfulness is giving of thanks from the heart. And Alex, can you read the next?
Sure. Be thou happy and well pleased, and arise to offer thanks, in order that thanksgiving may conduce to the increase of bounty.
And read the next one. And thankfulness is being grateful for what we have, and it's an attitude. It's not just, oh, I'm seeing this coming into my life, I'm grateful now, and then the next 5 minutes, oh, things are not good in my life. It has, you know, you don't have to constantly be barraged with things to feel great about life and feel thankful and happy and grateful for what you have. It's an attitude that's prevalent. It's an attitude that's in the front of everything in your life. And it takes work to really maintain the attitude of thankfulness, you know, but it is gratitude for everything that comes in our lives, for family, for friendships, for the blessings of having enough to eat, a roof over our heads, the simple things. And as we go along in life, we see that the simple things are really the things that matter the most. And it happens, you know, through our experiences and seeing the things that come into our lives and how valuable they become because of what they bring to us. And it always isn't in the form of a material thing. Sometimes it's the relationships, and sometimes it's an experience that bring us the most joy. And we see that the value of life is not just centered on material things. It's also the things that come to us in a different form. So we always want to think positively and think of how at the end of all of this, we can see how thankfulness will bring us a unique state of contentment. And really, isn't that what we all want to have, is to live in a place of contentment and peace and gratitude, which is a really ideal state. So we want to talk about how, and we recognize because we've become so busy in our daily lives, it's really difficult to maintain that state of thankfulness because we're busy trying to get things done, and we're working, and we're trying to plan, and we're trying to maintain a good, you know, lifestyle and a good manageable life. And it's so easy to kind of neglect that part of us that we need to always keep in the forefront, that we are going to be thankful and grateful for the things that we have. And it's really easy to complain when we're lacking and we have need in our lives. It's very difficult to be thankful because the needs sometimes are very heavy. Sometimes the needs are very extreme. But I believe that even in the most extreme times of need in our lives, I still believe that we have things that we can be thankful for. We still have so much that we can be thankful for.
We have a couple of comments in the chat that I'd like to read.
Yes, please.
Okay. It's from Leslie, but I think Leslie is with the group. I'm not sure if she is by herself or with the group. But anyway, it says, I think living a minimalistic lifestyle can effectively cut down on our expenditures, wherein you're only buy what you need and not just what you want. And then it says, being thankful shows gratitude, and gratitude leads to happiness.
Yes.
Let's see, one other comment just came in. Oh, okay. All right, thank you. All right, so I have the question ready. Are we ready for a question to be asked them what are they thankful for?
Absolutely.
All right.
So you can use this sheet that we're looking at, activity 1, quickly jot things that are just come to your mind that you're thankful for. It's so easy. You can just write forever because we are really, really blessed in our everyday lives. So jot down a few things that you're thankful for. And then when you're thinking about these things, decide which of these things you must have, the ones you can live without, and then the ones that are totally unnecessary. It's just the cherry on top, the whipped cream on top. It's unnecessary. Let's write them down really quickly.
And in the chat also, so I have another one that says about being thankful. It says, definitely we have every reason to be grateful. It is a source of energy. But I think what has happened in our society is that because of the internet and everything, we have become the unthankful generation. We feel like we're entitled. I know I see all around us, myself, our sons, little things really aggravate them so quickly. So hopefully we can have some friends share what are they thankful for.
Yes, what are you thankful for? Please share with us.
And then as they're thinking about that, so we have 3 columns in here of must have, can live without, and unnecessary. Emma, you want to explain what those are while they're writing their stuff?
Yes. For example, I must have water. I must have water. I drink a lot of water in the day. I'm so thankful for clean water. I must have it. I must have it every day. And I am extremely thankful for it. So that's the first thing I would put. I'm thankful for a place to live. I must have it. But if I didn't have it, could I live without it? I think I could, maybe not for a long time, but I think I could live without it for a while. So I want everybody to continue your list and identify if you must have it, if you can live without it, or if it's unnecessary, and just put an X in those little boxes.
So we have a list from our friends in person in Cameroon. They put in life as things that they're thankful for: life, food, shelter, parents, love, family, success, and health. Elliot says, I'm thankful for health and growth. Sorry, sneeze is coming. Mentally and spiritually. Let's see, what else do we have? I'm thankful for life, family, friends, nature, being able to be here today. Let's see. John Paul says, I'm thankful for my family and having a shelter over mine and my family's head. We're thankful we have been protected and good health in these times. Yes, definitely. I think this past year, health has been a something that is definitely be. That says someone from the group that comes, I'm thankful for ABCs of Wealth Workshop. It's our pleasure. Thank you for mentioning that. All right. Okay, Irma, we can continue. So there's a lot
Right. And Jinam says, I am thankful to Mother Nature. And that's beautiful because Mother Nature is provided this beautiful earth we live on and all of the things that we need to live. So yes, Jinam, I'm thankful for Mother Nature also. I'm going on to the next activity. We have are we doing the thankful tree?
I can pull that up. You can begin to describe. I should have pulled it up. Yeah, I'll pull it up.
And basically this thankful tree is giving us a picture of what things in our lives, how we can identify how important these things are, the things that we need and the things that we are maybe, you know, we can do without, and the things that are not necessary. And sometimes we can think of it as a tree. The trunk of the tree, you must have it. You know, all of the nutrients, the water, everything going into the trunk of the tree, that's the most important part of the tree. But then you have branches that go out from the tree. You have large branches that carry so many little branches on them, and those are really important to keep, the way that the tree is, and for it to really be as good of a tree as it can be, giving us shelter and providing the things into nature and the air that we need. And sometimes we can conceptualize what we have in life as a tree. We need the trunk. Those are the necessary things that we cannot live without. Then the big branches are the things that we need to have them, but maybe we could do without them. And then the little branches, the little leaves, the rest of the tree, those are things maybe we don't need quite so much of the material goods that we seem to be focused on a lot, because it is a the marketing machine of the of a system that wants you to buy and buy and buy. It works overtime to give you pictures of what your life could be like if you had this certain thing, and how much better your life would be if you had the next great iPhone, or if you had the next great gadget. And you look at all of this stuff and you're thinking, that would be really great if I could have that little gadget. Oh, I could really be efficient if I could just get more of this certain thing for me to do better at work. And then I've had this experience. I go and I purchase this thing that I think will be really great and will help me be more efficient and save a lot of time. And then I get it and I don't use it. Or I get it and it's not that making that big of a difference. I could have just kept my old phone, or I could have kept my last computer, things of that nature, that you look at it and you have this immediate reaction of, oh, I should get that. But when you really stop and you really think about it and you look at it and you think, well, I really don't need it quite as much as my immediate reaction is telling me. So that's how we can, if we stop and really think before we buy, before we reach out to grab the next big thing, that is just a discipline that we really would serve us so well if we could work on that. It really helps us a lot, because at the end of the day, as we said, what are the really important things in life? What are the things that we should be grateful for? And when we go on from gratitude, and gratitude encompasses so much. It encompasses gratitude for our parents, gratitude for our religious community, gratitude for our friendships, gratitude for people that we network with. If we do charity work, if we do volunteer work, that's a great part of my life, is doing some volunteer work with a choir that, we sing to raise funds for homelessness. I love my choir. I love being with my choir members, my fellow choir members, because we're working and doing food distribution, and we're doing clothing distribution, and those things give me great joy in life. It doesn't cost a cent. And it's a wonderful way to give back to our community. Those are the things that I'm thankful for. And it just makes me more thankful, because I see the blessings of life. I'm not homeless. I have plenty to eat, and I see people that struggle just for the basics of life. Gives me more gratitude about what we have. So I think that thankfulness goes into the lesson of respect. Now that you're thankful, now that you're conscious of the great blessings in life, what do you do with them? Now that I know that, and I recognize the great blessing of having unlimited amounts of water, for example, what do I do? How do I respect the blessing of having unlimited amounts of water, clean drinking water? I respect my blessing by treating it with care. I try very hard not to waste water. I try very hard to be conscious of using my reusable container. I try very hard not to use throwaway plastic. Throwaway plastic is harming our environment in such a way that it's not even, I can't even explain how much harm is in our environment from throwaway plastic, throwaway straws, throwaway forks and knives. It's just become so prevalent and it's become so heavy on our environment. Plastic, throwaway. You can use a plastic bag thousands of times and never ever have to get another one. You can use you can get your little cloth bags or your little bags that you get from, I get bags from participating in events, and you get a little goodie bag. You can reuse the goodie bag for your groceries and never have to use plastic again. You don't have to ever use a throwaway plastic bottle of water. And then the plastic that they use for the water that they sell to you in those plastic containers, if you overheat those plastic containers, they release chemicals into the water that is harmful to your body. And nobody tells you anything. It so happens that these things are manufactured, years go by, and then someone discovers, oh, there's carcinogens coming into our bodies from this plastic that is carrying the water. And we don't even find out about it. Just like, does everyone know what Teflon is, the nonstick cooking? When you have a little frying pan with a coating on it, so that so your eggs won't stick on it when you're frying your eggs in the morning. Well, it so happens that chemical that they put into that frying pan so that your eggs won't stick on is one of the most harmful things that has ever been developed. One of the most harmful chemicals that has ever been developed. And that chemical is everywhere. It's in the air, it's in our clothing, it's in our food. And then, I'm not trying to scare you into thinking a different way, but the fact remains that companies are in the business of making money. And sometimes the business of making money overtakes the concern for our good health. And then by the time we find out that all of this stuff is in our environment, in our water, in our cooking utensils, by the time we find out, we're just full of all of these chemicals. So this is how we respect the beauty and the blessings of life. We take good care.
Irma, I'm watching the time, just making sure that we don't run out of time.
Okay.
So I'm sorry, I didn't want to cut you, but maybe I'm going to put a question in the chat. As you were talking about becoming thankful and respectful of what we do, we can identify what are the things that we are wasting. So question in the chat, what are the things that we are wasting, either ourselves or we see people around us, because there's a lot, as everyone was talking about. There's so much that we can do. So while friends are typing into the chat, it's human nature. I think it's human nature for us to not to be wasteful, but to not be thankful, or to our temptations and desires. So I'm gonna share while we're having this. Gonna go back to the scriptures that we read on the first and second day. These temptations and desires that we have, they're normal. They're not abnormal. I hope nobody thinks that, oh, we are abnormal. But now more than ever, because of the internet, we are being enticed to wanting things, to buying things. We used to have to go to stores to buy things, but just as we were talking about last hour, now we just sit in front of, just grab our phone. At least it's that easy for us. We click a few things, and whatever we think we want shows up at our door. And then we realized that, oh, it was impulse buying. We really didn't need to have it. And this goes back to why we need to keep track of our income and expenses, because often we just keep on buying and buying, but don't realize how much money we've just overspent. And then we end up just throwing whatever the thing was we didn't need into trash. So I don't see any comments in the chat. Anybody else seeing anything? What are the things that we're wasting? Uh, so I got a little sidetracked. So we want to make sure that there is actually a purpose for our desires and temptation, which is for us to test ourselves. So if you haven't read these scriptures, please go back into the faith and finances from the table of content. So it is down here. Let me go back.
Yes, and so we need to find solutions to stop wasting, whether it's water, food, anything that we have in our lives that we really feel grateful for. We extend that gratitude into respect. That is the great lesson here.
Yeah. So maybe it's time for our breakout. So maybe these are, I think, the questions that can be addressed in the breakout sessions. You're gonna send people to breakouts, or should I?
No, I can. They should be already set in the same room. So if you just click on breakout rooms, you can
Yep. Okay.
join them.
All right.
Please,
Alex, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Yep, I can. John, you need to go to your breakout room.
I never got any link for break.
Oh,
Which, how do I find that?
let me just switch you to a different room. Let's see if you get it. Did you get one now?
you are thankful for that you may not have thought about before. And especially how we show respect for the things we're thankful for. Kastori, I don't think we heard from you. Usually have something good for us. Yes, unmute and share with us, please. Kastori.
Okay, this is Apple.
Okay. Let's see, can you unmute? Go. Akko?
Okay, yes, I'm there. One of the things I haven't realized until today that I have to be grateful for is social media.
Good.
It's quite funny. It is today that I realized that I have to be thankful for social media because there is so much knowledge that I have acquired thanks to social media because it has exposed me so much to the world. I have had countless opportunities, and it is thanks to social media, especially this training we are doing presently. So it is something to be thankful for. We should be thankful for social media. You know, that's the means of being connected to other persons out of the country and in other parts of the world. And we have to respect what we have. That is, if we have our phones, we have to respect it. We have to be conscious on what we post online, how we post it, or the kind of images that we portray to the world. Because whether we like it or not, there are other persons who may be looking up to us as role models. So being thankful for the social media, we have to respect ourselves and be responsible on the things we do online. Thank you.
Oh, that's really good. Thanks a lot. Let's see, it looks like we.
Please be sure to share that with everyone. Jinam just shared that his family is a very environment conscious family, but can be improved. And that they can be more tidy, but they're working on it. So that's a really good thing. The whole thing is to be conscious, is to keep in mind and to live in a way where we're thinking more about how to do a better job in respecting our environment. We're always keeping that in the forefront because, you know, growing up, the way I grew up, we just throw everything in the trash, bottles, plastic. Nobody really ever taught us anything about recycling. And as we get, you know, as I got older and started recognizing, understanding, then I thought, you know what? Yes, we should all put some effort into respecting the environment. And Elliot said, we can go green, we can create orchards and gardens, we can assist in planting trees and looking for more ways to get rid of things without burning it. Yes, Elliot, those burnings really affect the environment. So we can plan and we can start thinking of how do we deal with waste and products that we don't need anymore without harming the environment more. Planting trees and offsetting so much of that stuff that's going around in the environment. We can create the orchards and the gardens. That is always a wonderful way to offset so much in the environment that is not good. We can plant trees, we can create a park, a garden, make it so that we are honoring our earth and honoring our environment instead of using it and not respecting it. And that's the whole thing. We can do incremental changes. We're not going to overnight, we're not going to get this perfectly right. I know it. But every day, if everyone really tried a little bit harder and did just a little bit every day, it would be a much better.
Really great. They had a lot of great input from everyone. And I think everyone was pretty aligned, right? Everyone felt like, you know, we should respect money.
Sorry, people.
Oh, did we have more? I want to make sure everyone that wanted to say something got a chance.
Our discussion was about what can your family do to protect, what else can your family do, or what is a way your family can be more respectful of our environment? And Glory is going to present some of our perspectives on that. Glory, if you will unmute your audio. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. In our breakup room, we discuss on what is a way that your family can be more respectful of our environment. So we had many points of like managing our waste, to separate waste in 3 different, like in plastic, breakable and perishable, and to know where the right place to dump. And we are also responsible of our waste. We should not look at other people to come and manage our waste. And we also learned that wherever we visit, we should always leave the place better than we met it. And Daniel also made a statement that to make sure that your waste material is supposed to be kept in a particular place where it can be picked up, and so that it should be able to, so that they can discard it. So I think that's all. And also Elliot talked on planting trees to make it green, to send away the bad environment. So I think that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Daniel in Nigeria is raising his hand, so Alex.
Yeah, I'm not sure if he wants to say something. All right, so we'll wait and then come back to Daniel. Nari, go ahead, please, with your group.
Okay. We ended up having a discussion around how we show respect for the different things we're thankful for. So people kind of shared what they were thankful for and then ways they showed respect for it. And Akko talked about how he has realized during this class how grateful he is for technology and social media because of the knowledge and the exposure to the world. And just this class is a perfect example that he's getting exposure to people from other countries, as well as exposure to the financial concepts that we're doing. And so it's made him have more respect for how to be more conscious of what he posts and what kinds of things he shares, because he's more aware of how powerful social media is in his life. Dree talked about how she's learning to do better with financial literacy, even though this is something that's not new to her. She's really been grateful for the fact that every time she does something else, she learns more, like starting a travel business and it providing her with the residual income. She was able to buy more of the things she needed, and that she needs to focus on buying what she needs and not just what she wants. We had some issues, so I didn't get to hear from them. Oh, John Paul was saying that he appreciates what he has more and wants to use his possessions more wisely and not waste them. And so this really, I guess, just made everyone just more sensitive to what we mean when we say we're thankful. So do our actions really show our gratitude, whether it's for people, things, technology, opportunities, education? The way we show our gratitude would be by respecting it and not wasting it.
Right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Jay?
Okay, so the question that we responded to is, do we need to be respectful of money? Why or why not? And then we challenged ourselves and did a follow-up into different examples of how to show respect. But we had a great lively discussion in Cameroon. Everyone, everyone really had a chance to kind of say something that wanted to. And it was all in alignment of everyone really agreed that we do need to show respect to money, but we had a variety of different reasons as to why. And so everyone was on the same page that we should show respect to money. I don't think there was anyone that didn't feel like we didn't need to be respectful of it. So Deborah first started off in saying, we need to be respectful to money because if we respect it, then we will prioritize it. And when we prioritize it, then we will use it more wisely. And that will allow us to be more efficient in us trying to achieve our goals. And that it's a necessity of life, so that we need to respect it. And then Desmond shared with us that he felt like we also needed to respect it, but because you need to make use of it towards your goals. And if you don't respect it, then it might not come again, right? So really being conscious of the actions of how you are using it and treating it, and that if you don't show respect to it, then you might not be blessed with it again. And then Emmanuel shared with us, kind of similar along the same lines of Desmond, that what you don't respect will flee, right? And so if you don't show respect to it, then you might not, you will see it kind of leave through your expenses and what you spend it on fast, and you might not continue to have those same blessings. And so if you do show respect to it, then you will use it more valuably. And then Flavis said, yes, that we need to be respectful of our money, and that respect is reciprocal, the concept of respect, reciprocity. And she also said that she felt like money is a spirit, right? And so the same way that we are in tuned with our internal spirit, that we should really kind of also be in tune with our actions and how we use our money. And then Beston said, money is hard to come by, so we need to respect it. If you don't respect it, you might never have it again. And then Agape said that yes, we should respect money, and it is also hard to come by. But the ways in which we show respecting it is in our spending habits, so that we're not recklessly spending it, and that if you are recklessly spending it, then you are not respecting it. And then Elsie shared with us that, yes, we do need to be respectful, and that if you are not respectful to it, you might hinder your blessings and different investments that you might be able to make. And then Leslie shared with us that respect is also related to value, the concept of value, right? And really kind of looking at those actions of how you are using your money and the value that you are attaching it to you by the actions and what you choose to use your money on. So that if you don't respect it, you won't have as much value associated with the money. And also brought into the conversation the concept of him setting limits and boundaries, and that being really important. And then Victor shared with us, what you don't respect, you misuse and you devalue. So really looking into the actions of how you spend it, and not really living in fear, but just more so the concept of looking at the actions and how you are showing your respect to money. And some of the examples that we had shared about different ways that you might show respect to money is in what you choose to use it on and what you choose to invest in, right? If you choose to spend less and save more or invest more or share more, those are ways in which you might be able to show your respect, as opposed to using it on things that you want less versus things that you might need. And then also, and what we've been talking about a lot today in the first hour, and the way in which we keep track of our income and our expenses. And that might be a way to show respect by money, by consciously being aware of the money that we have coming in and what we're doing with that money, and through our expenses, what we're spending it on.
All right, very cool. Thank you so much, everyone, for the conversation. This particular is very dear to my heart. I mean, we are destroying our environment so fast that it's just unbelievable. We used to just throw things away. Then the idea of recycling came about, that whatever we grab, so let's say, for example, plastic bottle waters or whatever, recycle. But the new concept that is gaining some momentum is actually the concept of refusing. It's like things that are being offered to us and just not even taking it. So for example, I know this is probably very true in a lot of places, the plastic cutlery, fork, spoon, and knife. They're just available. We go out, I know this is the case in US and probably in Canada, and probably other countries too. And these are just readily available. We don't need all of these to eat our food, or we can bring our own. That's something that we can definitely, it's a little inconvenient to have a set of silverware in our pockets or in our purses or whatever we have. But these plastics, does anybody know? So put it in the chat. Does anybody know how long it takes for plastic to decompose back into earth? Let's see if anybody knows. Paper usually takes about a couple of weeks. Plants and let's say food items, they usually decompose in a month or so. But how long does it take for plastic to decompose back into earth, which means that you cannot even see it anymore? So we can refuse. We can just say, no, I don't need this. I don't need a straw. There are metal straws that people can use. Plastic, as we were talking about, the other part of plastic is these plastic bags that we may use when we go to supermarkets to put food items or things. Let's see. Okay. Another one that has become very popular are these Ziploc bags. I know it's very popular here in US and Canada. I'm not sure how it is in Africa. Probably it is there too. And while we used to buy these Ziploc bags, now most of the things that we buy from the supermarket, they already come in a Ziploc bag that we can reuse them. We don't have to throw them away. So everything has become about just single use. We just grab something, plastic bottle, and just think about how often do you see one of these bottles half full in trash? We see it a lot. So let's see, there's some great ideas are coming in as far as how long it takes for plastic to decompose. Hundreds, they don't decompose after 5 years, 7 to 10 years, 200 to 400 years. 500 years, 15 years. It's actually about 1,000 years. If you do research, it's about 1,000 years that it takes for any of these plastics to decompose back into Earth. And that is if they are left in Earth. We see, I will share a lot of videos this week in the WhatsApp group that our fish are eating these plastic because they think it's something that, because of their color or whatever, they think that it's food. They're feeding it. Birds are feeding it to their babies. And why is it happening? Because we just don't want to be inconvenient. It's a lot easier to grab one of these wherever we see it than carrying one of our own uh, bottles or cups. We need to get a little bit creative. We even carry, and even my family laughs at me, they give me a hard time. Even when we go traveling, we always carry our own reusable bags. So when we go to stores, we don't have to use a plastic bag. Let's see. Yvonne says we travel with camping utensils and refuse the plastic ones. That's perfect. There is so much that we can do. And as soon as we start, unfortunately, because of the social media or everything else, our children are learning to be wasteful. Our staff know when we go to school, some of the schools we go to here in the US, they provide free breakfast to students. And sometimes they don't even need it, and they just grab it, open the cheese a little bit, and then throw the rest away. So we have become, unfortunately, such a wasteful society. We have become the most generous to our trash, to rubbish. We just grab some, most of the time we don't even pay. We just grab and throw away. We grab and we throw away. So becoming conscious of these are going to be very important. All right, we are at the top of the hour. Let's take a 5-minute break and then we'll come back. Thank you. And all right, so Jade she's presenting the last hour of today's session, which is about generosity. And then we'll wrap it up with assignments for this week and getting ready for next week. Jade?
Okay, great. So I am going to share my screen. Can everyone see the screen? Okay, great. So I'm going to first read the first quote that we have here, and then I'm going to see if we can have one of our friends read the second part. But the first quote says, "If a man be imbued with all good qualities but be selfish, all the other virtues will fade or pass, and eventually he will grow worse." And I think we've been talking a lot today about our actions and kind of the awareness of our actions and the consciousness of our actions and throughout all of the lessons today. But on this particular section where we're talking about generosity, it really has to do with what it means to be generous, what that looks like. Do we have a responsibility to be generous? What happens when we are generous? Are we required to be generous? So we're really going to be kind of going through a lot of those different concepts throughout this portion. Can I have one? Let's see. Let me see if I can call on Elliot. Are you able to read on the screen where it starts with generosity is giving?
Yeah, generosity is giving and sharing. You share freely, not with the idea of receiving something in return. You find ways to give to others happiness, and you give simply because it is a joy to give to others. Generosity is one of the best ways to show love and friendship to everyone you know.
Very good. Thank you so much for doing that. So this concept of generosity is really about not just giving, right? But when we give, that we do not expect something in return, right? So when we give something to someone, we don't give whatever it is that we choose to give with the expectation that they will do something for us in return, whether it be give something back to us or perform an action for us. Generosity is really just the act of giving and having zero expectations of anything coming back to us. So we give solely because we want to give to that person, whatever it is that we choose to give. It could be money, it could be other things that we will talk about, different ways of being generous. But the idea is really about the act of giving and having zero expectations of anything coming back to us, whether it be in that moment or later on down the line as well, right? So it's not just about that person doing something for us in return based off of what we give them, but even if we give and think later on down the line, oh, well, if I give something to this person, then maybe in the future, they might do something for me as a favor, right? That's not really what generosity is. It's really just the act of giving without any expectations of anything coming back to us. And when we teach this lesson in the schools, we do an activity called bridge crossing. So that you see that as the first activity here on the screen. And that activity is this game where the students, they have to cross a bridge and they're separated into teams. And they have to figure out how do they get their entire team from one side of the bridge to the other side of the bridge. And underneath the bridge is this water that's full of sharks. So if any one of their team members fall off of that bridge, then the sharks are going to eat them. They are no longer living, right? And so you see through that activity, the generosity being played out and the decisions that their team members make. And you see some team members taking an individualistic approach, right? And they cross the bridge and they're like, oh, I'm done, I won. But it's not about them individually. It's about their whole team making it fully across the bridge. And what sacrifices do they have to do in order to do that? How do they work together? Communication is really important. The concept of teamwork, right? How do they really work together to get their entire team from one side to the other, and what that actually looks like, and how it includes generosity? How do they have to be generous to their other teammates because it's for the greater good of achieving the goal of getting that whole team from one side to the other? Of course, we cannot do that activity virtually, but I did want to explain it to you so that you could kind of think through why that activity on your own and see what might come from that just through thinking through that. The activity that we can do for those of you that are currently on track of doing the assignments prior to our sessions is activity number 2. And that's the idea of joyfulness, right? And the first part of that activity, we talk about what can I do? And this part, we're going to be doing a lot of input. So I'm going to be posing some questions to you guys in the chat. So feel free to please share your responses so that we can have an engaging conversation. So what can I do to bring joy and happiness to others, right? Generosity has a lot to do with not just giving money, right? You might see someone who is less fortunate than you, who might be asking for money on the streets, right? And generosity is not just about giving that person money, right? There's things that you can do that create joyfulness for others, which is included in generosity. And so the first question that I would like to share in the chat, thank you, Alex, for doing that. What can you do, whether it be an action, an activity, something that you can do yourself to bring joy and happiness to others? And I'll kind of open up by sharing for myself, something that I do that can bring joy and happiness to others is that I cook. And I have been told that people enjoy my cooking. And so cooking is something that I can do that brings joy and happiness to others. Maybe if I was not a good cook or what I cooked was not good, maybe that would not bring joy to others. But I have been, it has been shared with me that people do enjoy my cooking. And so that is something that I do myself that brings joy and happiness to others. I see in the chat, Elliot has shared getting a promotion in my job. Maybe in the chat, Elliot, explain more how that might bring joy and happiness to others, right? That I can automatically understand, right? You getting rewarded by your hard work and your efforts in getting a promotion can bring joy and happiness to you. But this question is really about how that might bring joy and happiness to others. So maybe explain a little bit more by what you mean by that in the chat. And then Daniel in Nigeria says, I can sing to make others happy. right? So Daniel, that must mean that people enjoy your singing. I know if I probably sang for other people, it probably would not bring them joy and happiness. And so some of us have talents that others do not have. And so Daniel has said that by singing, he's able to bring joy to others. Leslie says, I really enjoy and admire people who help others and stay anonymous. That is real generosity. So when you choose to give, right, it doesn't have to be known that you are actually doing it. You can choose to give anonymously, like Leslie is saying, and that can bring joy to other people. It doesn't necessarily have to be identified that you are the person that's giving, so that you get credit or people see you as the one that is providing. In the chat, we also have Glory says, identify what the person wants and reach out to them if you have the means. So really focusing on what it is that the person that you want to give to, what it is that they need, so that you're not just giving something that they might not need. Because then that whole concept of waste that we've been talking about can happen, right? And that could happen in any, in the act of being generous, you could give something that somebody doesn't need. And so then that person is not going to use that. And then that could end up wasting that act of generosity. Whereas if you actually thought through and said, okay, I want this person, or this person needs this particular item, I'm going to give that person this, then it's making sure that there's an alignment there of what it is that they need and what it is that you're giving. So then Nari has shared with us, planning events or celebrations for others. Nari really likes to, she's what we call an event coordinator. She's an event extraordinaire. She's really good. She's planned some events for us that have been great. I'm thinking of this making candles event that we did. That was really fun. And she's really good at that. She's talented in that. Dree has shared with us, she also creates events to connect African-American professionals relocating to the San Diego area. And that can bring joy and happiness to others. Great. Daniel is saying, I can offer my knowledge in educating people to make them happy. And Elliot is saying, oh, he's provided more information. So getting a promotion means achieving his life goals. It brings more money, which means I can handle more responsibilities. And this takes the weight off of my parents' shoulders. And these gives them joy knowing that they now have some. So then I'm going to challenge you, Elliot. So it's not just you getting the promotion, right? It is what you choose to do with the effects of that promotion, right? The money that you get from that promotion. And those acts are the acts of the generosity that is bringing joy and happiness to others. Because you could get the promotion and then keep the money to yourself, and then they're not actually having any joy or happiness from it because you're not doing anything that's impacting them, right? But your actual acts of what you choose to do with the more money that you've gotten from your promotion is the act of the generosity, right? Daniel says, I give motivational teaching to stimulate people in accepting responsibility for themselves. Wow, we have a talented group here. Aiko says, giving a listening ear and a shoulder to cry on. Yeah, sometimes it's not about what you say or what you do, just your presence, right? And just listening to someone or being there for someone. You don't actually have to do any action particularly. That can bring joy and happiness to others. And then lastly, we have Leslie saying, I love to see people happy because I helped them maximize their potentials or become a better version of themselves. Great. So we've talked now a lot about what it is that we can do to bring joy and happiness to others. The second part of this is about the locations or organizations where you might be able to go to help others. So think about things that might be in your community, different buildings or organizations or places where you can go to help others. And go ahead and put that in the chat, right? Where are some places where you can go? I know in the example that I gave about cooking, a place that I can go in a community where I live is called a soup kitchen. And for those of you, our friends around the world that might not be familiar with what a soup kitchen is, it is a place where people can go who don't have access to food, right? And they can get food, right? And so I can go and I can cook food at the shelter, or I can bring food to a shelter or a soup kitchen. And people can come who don't have access to food and they can get it. And it's prepared food. It's not food that they have to prepare themselves, because oftentimes at these soup kitchens, people that don't have the access to the food, they don't have places where they can go and cook and prepare the food. So it is the preparation of the food where they can go and get access to it. So I'm seeing lots of people in the chat. So Elliot's saying, or to a place where you can go to help others is schools. And Daniel says that you can go to churches. Our friends in Cameroon say sharing food and other items to internally displaced people in our war-torn community. And that came from Desmond, right? So where might you be able to go to share food with those that are displaced in your community? Irma has said homeless shelters. Echo says to the church. So lots of people are going to the church. Is a great place because there's a lot of different ministries that happen in a church where you can provide a lot of different actions of providing things that people might need, or doing activities with them that might bring them joy. Leslie says churches, schools, and foundations. Echo says orphanages, schools, hospitals. Leslie says sometimes on the streets, right? Sometimes it's not necessarily in a building. You can find people where you can bring joy and happiness to them, or be generous with your time and your actions to them. And it doesn't necessarily have to be attached to a specific organization or a building. I know in our current situation with the pandemic, right, it might be a little bit more challenging because of safety reasons and health reasons, that it might look a little bit different how we might be generous with our time and our actions, and where we might be able to go, because we don't want to put people at risk. It just means that we need to be a little bit more creative. It doesn't mean that we're not able to do so. It just means that we might have to be more cautious about the ways in which we do it, because this situation has only presented to us that there are more people that need help, not less people. And so being generous has become even more apparent that it is needed around the world. Nari is saying food pantry and distribution centers. So food pantry is kind of similar to like a food bank for those of us around the world that might not be familiar with that concept. It's like I talked about, a soup kitchen where people can go to get prepared food. A food pantry or a distribution center is a place where people can go to get food that maybe have a place where they can actually prepare it themselves. So they don't actually necessarily need someone to cook it for them, but they can go and get fresh produce, or they can go and get items to prepare for their families when they don't have access or the funds or the means to be able to do that for themselves. Daniel in Nigeria says, I can go to an IDP center. I'm not sure I'm familiar with an IDP center. Daniel, maybe if you can share with us what IDP stands for in the chat, that would be helpful. Elliot says refugee centers and neighborhood meetings. Yes. Juliana says you can go to an orphanage. Great. Elliot says cultural group meetings. Elliot, please share more about what those mean. I know a lot of us around the country are not familiar with what those look like. I've been on that side of the world, so I've actually been a part of some of those cultural group meetings. But maybe share with those who might not be familiar what that looks like, so that we can all learn from each other. Our friends in Africa say, Schneider said a school. Desmond says an orphanage. Bessem says a prison. That's something that we haven't heard before. You can go and help others through prisons. I know lots of churches have prison ministries. So that's an example of what you might be able to do. Flavis says a hospital. Agape says a woman empowerment center. Glory says can help with business startup kits for those who have handwork but can't afford the materials. So helping people that have talents but don't have the ability to afford the materials that might be needed for those talents. So an IDP is an internally displaced person. So there's centers for people that have been displaced. Leslie is in Cameroon, so and Daniel is in Nigeria. So there are places in different countries where people might be displaced where they can go. Here, I think it might be similar to the US here, where we have shelters where people might be able to go, or they have community homes where people can go that might have been displaced. Elliot says we have cultures in our country which originate from different villages. So when the people from the same village meet in a city, they usually form gatherings so they can continue to share their cultural ties. So this is a place where in Cameroon, they and other countries that have these cultural gatherings and meetings, and oftentimes they talk a lot about kind of how they can align with the work that they're doing so that they're not being less efficient, right? So I know in our market, we have our markets are really saturated with all these organizations who really want to do a lot of similar things. And I often think, man, it would be great if we could kind of align lots of organizations in different areas who are doing similar things so that we're not recreating the wheel, because I think that our impact could be greater. But when we operate in silos, it doesn't mean that the work is less impactful. It just means that I think that we could reach more if the synergies were aligned and we can kind of have organizations working together. But that's just kind of things that I think about on my own. But it doesn't mean that the organizations or the work that they're doing is not beneficial, because we all can do more. And there's a lot of ways that we can do more and how we can contribute back to the society, and thinking about kind of conversations that we talked about before, the legacy that we really want to leave behind. Generosity has a lot to do with that, right? Our legacy is not just about what's attached to what we choose to spend our money on it, but it's about our time and how we choose to give back, and the ways in which we do that, that contributes to the legacy that we leave behind as well. So then for the sake, we're having great contributions in the chat. I can't read them all, but because for the sake of time, I want to make sure that we get to our last question before we go into the breakout rooms. And that is about, what can others do to bring joy and happiness to me? So before I have you guys answer that question, I really want you to think about, when you are being generous to others, or you are choosing to do something to give to someone else to bring them joy and happiness, is it easier to do that when you are happy yourself? Or is it harder to do that when you don't feel joy and happiness yourself? So if you think that it's easier to share and be generous with others when you feel joy and happiness yourself, put yes in the chat. And if you think that it is harder when you don't maybe feel that joy and happiness yourself, go ahead and put no in the chat so I can see kind of what, and there's no right or wrong answer. I just want to see what people are thinking, right? So this question is about us ourselves before we can give or be generous with others. Is it easier to do that when we feel good, or is it harder to do that when we don't feel good? So just put yes or no in the chat, and then we can kind of share.
Jade, you had rephrased this question, and I forgot to change it. And now I can. Last series that we did, you had a really great way of putting this thing. I'm trying to remember how it was.
Yeah, and I will ask them that in a second. I just wanted to pose that question first.
And I promise I'll change it this time.
Okay, so we had Juliana is the only one that has responded yes. Okay, now some others are coming in. So Aiko is saying it is easier to be generous when you feel good. Yes, that is what I was driving at, right? So when we take care of ourselves first, right, then we are able to be more generous with others. And it's the same concept of like when you're on a plane, right? Then they say if something happens on the plane, you have to put your own oxygen mask on first before you can help someone else, right? That is the concept of really making sure that we do things for ourselves to bring us joy and happiness, because it's harder for us to be able to be more generous or to bring joy and happiness to others if we are not happy ourselves. And so this last question is about not what others can do to bring joy and happiness to me. It's about what we can do for ourselves, right? What are things that you can do yourself to bring joy and happiness to yourself? So therefore you can then be that vessel concept. You then can share and pass through that joy and happiness to others. And I will give an example. one of the things that I do to bring joy and happiness to me is I really like to swim, right? And when I swim or be around water, it's just like this calming, this peaceful thing, and it brings a lot of joy and happiness to me. And it doesn't matter what could be happening in my day or what my mood is. If I just hop in the water and go for a swim, it's like an instant mood changer, and it makes me happy. It changes my whole outlook and my mood and my feelings. And so, what are some other examples of things that you guys might do to bring joy and happiness to you? And I will kind of pose that question for you guys to think about, just because I want you guys to think through what things that you can do for yourself to bring joy and happiness to you, and that would allow you to be more generous to bring joy and happiness to others. And so with that, I will go ahead and open up the breakout rooms for some more discussion. And feel free to kind of, if you guys want to share about that in your breakout rooms, you can do that as well. But let me see. Stop sharing. And then open all rooms. And Alex, I'm just assigning a couple of people that weren't in a room.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, sometimes when they leave, they need to.
Okay.
Did you have something else that you wanted to share?
Yes, I wanted to
Okay,
talk about
great.
having a personal responsibility in making others happy.
Uh-huh.
I have this belief that you cannot give what you do not have.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that if you, you as a person are not happy, then you are unable to make others happy. You are unable to be generous to others. And generosity goes with a lot of things. From what I know, in order to be generous, you need to be healthy. So
Okay.
Just bear with us
No
a
worries.
little.
Yeah.
You're getting her? So put your volume on now so everybody can get you. Okay. It's very unstable. No, it doesn't connect to that speaker even. I don't know why. No. Okay.
About, those of you that are very young and just starting out in your careers, it's never too early to think about, because what we were talking about at the very beginning when we were doing the review, and remember we were looking at the different times in your life, the different stages of life, and how in one stage, you're at this point, and then the next stage is your working life, and then your next stage is your retirement time or your retirement years. It's always great to start thinking about how you're planning to carry forth your idea of sharing, your idea of being generous, giving of your gifts to the world once you have completed those years of work and career. And Daniel gave a very good point. He wants to keep a business that will keep on generating so he could be even more generous. He'll have the comfort of retirement, and he'll have the time and the space to share knowledge of financial literacy. And and yes, and Elliot says, stop procrastinating. That's so true, Elliot. I used to think back when I was in my 20s, when I'm in my 60s, that's so far away. I'll think about it later. But it happened so fast. 40 years went by so quickly. And when you turn around and look and consider that a little bit more planning would give me a little bit more means, opportunities, and a better place in life to share more, to be generous, to give more, to give a higher quality of time and resources to the things that are needed the most in our community and society. So it's great to think about it at any time in your life, especially when you're young, because when you do like, remember, I don't know if I shared with you last week, I was saying I had a client that used to tell me a slow nickel beats a quick quarter. You know, a nickel is 5 cents, a quarter is 25 cents. But he always used to say, a slow nickel beats a quick quarter. And it's so true. When you plan early and just plan with a little bit and you let it grow, it will be much, much more than trying to make a quick investment or trying to do it later in life with more money. It always works out that way because time will really help you see how you can generate many more resources planning earlier and planning with even a little bit. It will generate much more in the future. So if anyone has anything else to share for today about how we can share and be generous in our retirement years, if you have any more thoughts, I would appreciate if you could just share them now. We have a couple of minutes before we go back into our main session, but I really enjoy these contributions and your ideas because we're all coming from different countries and different points of view and different cultures. And it's great to share how we have perspectives from different places and how we can come together and share those things and really have great ideas of how we can build more so that in the future we can be more generous and we can give a higher quality of contribution.
Quick to leave your room. Irma, you're muted.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. For some reason, Daniela is having problems with her video and sound.
Yes, it happens. So that's the joy of having internet. Even when we think it's fast internet. All right, is everyone back? It looks like everyone is back, or we lost a few. All right, Irma, since you are unmuted, please go ahead.
Yes, our question was, how can you be generous in your retirement years? And in parentheses, with time, talent, or money? And I really love that question. We had our member Daniel. He was going to share with everyone what we discussed in our breakout room. I don't see him right now.
He's there. I just asked him to unmute.
Okay.
Daniel, you need to unmute yourself, please.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone. Our group, we discussed how we can be generous with our time and money when we are in retirement. of course, we know that retirement is a period within which a person is no longer in active service. And so we agree, because you're no longer in active service, that you have to first of all plan for your retirement within your active working age, so you can save money, because it's very easy to say I'm going to give money, but it's what you have you are going to give. So you have to plan for your retirement. Our friend Elliot said that it's going to set up a lot of passive income. So by creating business opportunities, maybe investing in different income generating investments, so you can have enough money. And then out of the money you have, then you can give to the needy in whatever way you want to assist them. And then another person said that when she was in active service, there were clothes that were meant for party, ceremonial services, maybe going for training and all that. Now she's no longer in active service. Those clothes, she doesn't need them anymore. So what's she going to do when she retires? She packed those clothes and then she sent them to shelter home where they are needed. Maybe there could be people who wants to go for interview. They want to be corporately dressed, but they don't have the money. So with her offering those clothes to the shelter home, those who need them can use them, go for interview. And that way she is being of help to those who need them even when she has retired. And then, of course, we also agree that in our group, one thing we can, all of us, we agree that we can offer when we retire is our time, because we're no longer in active service. So we can use our time, especially for this financial literacy training we're receiving. We can have enough time to offer it to the youth. We can even have enough time to offer it to corporate organizations if they need our help, so that they can leverage on the knowledge we have and then enhance on their operations and be able to be more efficient in the way they do things. Then we also agree that we stop procrastination. In other words, you don't have to wait until the time you retire before you start planning for your retirement, because one thing is sure, that you will certainly retire someday. So you don't have to procrastinate planning for your retirement. You start as early as much as you can. And then another good thing we talked about is that you should start investing on small business. You don't have to wait until you have millions before you start making investment, because all of that will make you to be procrastinating the time, and sometimes your retirement just come and you don't have anything on ground that you can leverage on. And I think that was basically what we agree on. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you so much. Nari?
Okay. Our group had a really interesting conversation. Our question was, do you think that generosity is a personal responsibility? Why or why not? And it sparked all kinds of ideas. John Paul talked about how we have to balance our generosity. And some of us, it might be people pleasers, if we aren't balanced, could end up really being taken advantage of sometimes. So we do have to have some discernment about where to be generous and when to be generous. And then we talked a lot about the fact that generosity is a lot more than money. And so Dree had a great example about knowing people and really knowing your friends, and how a group of her friends came because they know her personality, and they knew that during COVID, especially at the beginning, we were kind of locked down, how difficult that would be for her. And they basically just, came to her house and kidnapped her and made her go out with them and just drive around, just because they knew she needed to get out of the house. But because they were her friends, they understood how painful it was going to be for her to be on lockdown like that. And so they were generous with their time and were willing to go and get her just to do that because they knew it would be important to her. And then Akko talked about how we can't give what we don't have. And so this got us into the whole conversation about self-care and being aware of what we need, maybe even being aware enough and having people that are close enough to us that we can ask for what we need. Because we also have to be generous with ourselves, not just with others, so that we can then give back to others. And so we also have to be it brought us back to discipline. Are we disciplined enough with our time that we have time to take care of the things that are required of us? But then do we have that time that we need to take care of others? And so it is a personal issue, because depending on how we deal with our time, it's just as important as how we deal with our money. If we blow all our money on random stuff, we don't have money to help when we hear that there's an offering at church or a family member or a friend who may be in need. And so it gets back to our personal discipline as well. And then our being effective in our time and our communication, so that people understand that we are available to help and know that they can come to us with ways that we can then be generous to them. And then Yvonne talked about how we have to be mindful and take the initiative. We can't just kind of sit back and wait. Sometimes we may have to ask for what we need. And we also definitely, it's very personal that we may have to take the initiative and offer and not feel like we're intruding or on someone, but let them know, or I could say, hey, Irma, do you need me to, give you a ride to XYZ if I know we're doing something and your car's, in the shop or whatever. So we may have to take the initiative sometimes. And then Hazel talked about how there are texts in the Bible. There are different Bible verses that deal with stress, and we may need just something. She had someone that she just merely sent them a text message. And sometimes just doing something like that, just taking time out of your schedule to let somebody know that you do care about what they're going through and sending them some encouragement is a way of personally being responsible for your being generous with a little bit of your time, a little bit of your effort, stopping what you're into right now and thinking about somebody else.
All right, thank you.
And I think that was everything.
All right, very good. Jade?
All right. So the question that we had was, we've all been given resources of time, money, and giftedness. How would you like to grow in being generous to others? So this question was really about forward thinking, about kind of an assessment of where we are right now and how we see ourselves growing through being more generous and what that would look like. And so starting off our conversation, we had Bessem share with us about time management and devoting more time to helping others, right? And so if Bessem is more efficient with their time management, then that would free up more time for them to be able to share more time with others. And so really it's about kind of that concept that Nari was just touching on about really looking at ourselves first before we can be generous with others. And so if we're more efficient with our time, then that frees up more time to be able to give to others. And then Flavis shared with us concentrating more on talents and gifts that God has given to her, specifically her talent of singing, and being able to use her voice to bring more joy and happiness to those who are depressed specifically. And then Emmanuel shared with us that gifts are related to resources. And so really the being more aware of how you are spending your resources and that alignment of your gifts. And so using that to be able to share with others is how he saw himself growing in that area of generosity. Desmond, I was told by our friends in Cameroon that Desmond is the king. They have created a community there in Cameroon, and Desmond has, I don't know if he was elected the king. I should have asked that question, but I've been told that he is the king of their community. So their king, Desmond, shared with us that he has the gift of teaching, and specifically teaching saving skills. And so through what he saw himself growing in is that gift that he has of being able to teach others, and specifically in the area of saving skills, will allow others to be able to generate more income and to be able to improve their lives. And so that is one way he saw his gifts and talents kind of growing in the area of generosity. And so I thanked the king for sharing that with us. And then we had Elsie, who also talked about her talents of singing. And she also is talented in writing poetry. And using those talents, she saw herself in growing in and being able to inspire others. And so, like I had mentioned before, we really have a talented group here. I'm always really impressed by all of the gifts and talents that everyone has. Then we had Schneider share with us focusing and training others to help bring them more joy. And then Victor shared with us the concept of using our time more properly and efficiently. It kind of tied in a lot with what Bessem opened us up with, that time management piece, right? So if we use our time more properly and more wisely, and not just our time, but also our gifts and resources, really taking that assessment of making sure that we are purposeful with our time, with how we use our gifts and how we use our resources, because we can, if we are more efficient in the way and more purposeful in the way in which we do that, then that would allow us to be more generous to others and be able to donate more and make ourselves available more to be able to, he also introduced the concept of empowerment, really to empower others so that they can then turn around and do the same to others, and that kind of impact grow. And then lastly, I shared with the group that a way in which I would like to see myself grow in this area is specifically with the community of our elders, right? I think the elder community is a way in which I see myself personally growing in this area, because I think that oftentimes we take for granted a lot of the wisdom that the elder community has. And I think this is universal. I think oftentimes as people age and they get older, we might not spend as much time with them because we get caught up in our own lives and think that we're so busy and we have all these things that we do, but they have a lot of lived life experiences and they have a lot of wisdom that they can share with us. And so just the concept of it doesn't necessarily have to be an act, right? It could just be the presence of being there and spending time with them and talking and sharing and having them share with you their life experiences and how that has impacted them. And then that can then turn around and you can share that with others. So that concept of like really passing through and being used as the vessel is where, specifically within the elder community, is where I myself can see myself growing in the concept of generosity.
All right, very cool. Thank you so much. As you can see, there's so much rich conversation, and we're really not doing justice by doing this in a short time. There is much more to do together and to see. And I hope that everyone can begin to see the format of our program, that we're just starting this conversation among the various groups in here. So I want to go back and share a couple of things. And as definitely as you can see, our program is not just about the technical aspects of finances. We've touched very little things like the budgeting and let's see, active and passive income. But as you can see, we are trying to build this foundation. So I think one of the themes that's emerging from our conversation today is that, and we started from the beginning, is that we need to trust, going back, that our livelihood is going to be provided for. So I'm just going to read the highlight. It says, prepare for me the means of livelihood. Give me my bread through channels over which I have no control, thy heavenly treasures. So when we trust in that, then we are going to have time. And what do we with our time, and with our not only time, but different types of wealth that we have, is forgetting our own selves, turning our eyes toward our neighbors, bending our energy toward whatever may foster the education of men. Because when we do this, if we follow in his way, his incalculable and imperishable blessings will be showered upon us. And there's so many examples you're seeing here. And this education that we're doing together, we are bringing you a tool. We are not telling you how to run your finances, but we're just giving you a tool that hopefully everyone can implement in their lives depending on their realities, their personal, family, and community realities. Because as you can see, we're coming together from all parts of the world. And while there are many things that are common that we can all follow, but then there are a lot of things that you have to look at it individually in your family and then in your community in here. Let's see, there's so many things in here. One of the other themes that we were talking about was being generous to ourselves in the future. So as we're, what can we do to bring joy and happiness to ourselves? And that is for our future. So if we consume and use every resource that we have right now, whether it's money or time, then in the later years, in our retirement years, we will not be as comfortable. We will not be prepared for it. We normally have one session on retirement. And I think for those of you who arrive a little later, we're thinking of adding another session in June. So we'll be working with Victor and the team in Cameroon to see if we can add that session, because there are many different topics that we will not be able to complete in the last session that we have scheduled for next week. So there's going to be a lot of assignments. I'll be sending out the assignments. Let me see where I go back in here. One of the other assignments that we'll be sending to you is this tab called My Wealth and Resources. So you see it under the basic level. So in here, we'll be asking you to list down the things that you can share and invest with your community, all these different types of wealth. And I think this has become clear that when we look at the world of wealth, we're not just thinking about monetary aspects of life. There are so many different things that we can consider as our wealth, and knowledge, talents, skills, physical, mental, emotional. Like, I can remember someone says that the king is great at teaching. So teaching others, that's a talent that we have. Next week, one of these sessions is going to be about talent. So we'd like you to think about what talents maybe you'll be able to present to the group. Maybe not in a live session, but it would be great if you can record your talent, short 2-3 minutes, and then we'll post it. We'll be posting it in the WhatsApp group. So we know that our friends in Cameroon, Elsie and the others created that song, which is, I watched that thing so many times. If you haven't watched it, please do. That little short 2-minute song is such a joy that they were able to create that right after the first session that we have together. So please think about your talent. It can be anything: singing, drawing, telling jokes, playing sports. Whatever your talent is, if you can record it and share it in the WhatsApp group, that would be really great. One of the other things that when I was hopping around in the different breakout rooms came about was often we think that we know what another person needs or another group of people need. And we want to give them or force them, oh, I know this is your problem and this is how I'm going to fix it for you. And that may not be the most conducive way of helping other people, listening to them and seeing what is it that they need. Of course, there might be times that we might interject a little bit, but overall, and this is something that we see a lot, particularly here in the US, is that, as I'm not sure who was mentioning, one of our facilitators, that there's so many groups in US that are trying to do different things. And we're all, I think it was Jade that mentioned that we're all working in our silos. Everybody has created a nonprofit organization, raised money and do things. And hardly ever we get together and try to work together. While everything that we do is necessary, but working together has a much greater effect. And we're trying to really do that and encourage everyone to do it as well. I think I better stop talking. So I'm going to stop sharing and see if there are any last minute questions or comments before we end today. And one other thing is that, as you can see, like I mentioned, there's a lot to be shared. When we are in person, we conduct the program a little differently, depending on what age group you're doing this. So the format that you're seeing right now is the virtual family format, when we do this program in schools, let's say for grade 3, 4, or 5, it's a little bit different. It's a lot more interactive, a lot more engaging, and particular to that group. So as we move forward, hopefully for those that are thinking of presenting this program to their local community, we can work with you individually to see how we can support you. So that's all I have. I'm gonna stop and see if anybody has any comments. If not, the assignments and the videos will be coming shortly in the WhatsApp group. Thank you everyone for joining, and we will see you next week. Bye.